Every little thing you think that you need. Every little thing you think that you need. Every little thing that's just feeding your greed. Oh, I bet that you'd be fine without it.
Hey y'all, some exciting news before we dive into this episode. The Minimalists are going to host a private podcast and live stream exclusively for our Patreon supporters. We're calling this Ask the Minimalists Anything. Anyone who contributes $2 or more over at our Patreon page can attend this special live stream. And if you can't make the live stream itself, the live session, the live podcast, don't worry. You'll still have access to the private video and the private audio podcast after it's recorded. We hope to do this at least once a quarter, maybe more frequently for our Patreon supporters. And please note that none of the money from our Patreon campaign goes to our personal bank accounts. Rather, what we're going to do is use these funds to build our own new podcast studio and a film studio, which is going to allow us to do a bunch of really cool things, like take live callers on the air, improve overall audio quality, and bring guests on the show. We're also going to hire a full-time filmmaker to create a video version of this podcast. And we also want to produce a bunch of other meaningful video creations like web series, TV shows, interviews, documentaries, video essays, and more. And because we refuse to clutter our podcast with advertisements, Patreon really is the best way for us to fund these creative endeavors together. So let me ask you this. Are you willing to help? If so, please become a patron today. Head on over to patreon.com/theminimalists, or you can go to our website. It's just theminimalists.com and click on the donate button at the top. We'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. And please know that your support is greatly appreciated. Together, we will create something meaningful. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Minimalist Podcast, where we discuss what it means to live a meaningful life with less. My name is Joshua Fields Milburn.
And I am Ryan Nicodemus, and together we are the Minimalists.
In Spokane.
Yeah.
This is so great. We just drove over here this morning. We live right down the street in Missoula, Montana. So my house is 199 miles from your Chipotle. While we're waiting for some folks to line up and ask some questions, Ryan, I had a question for you. So Ryan was gone for like it felt like forever, but you were in Tokyo for, what, 2 weeks?
Yeah.
You and your partner, Mariah.
Yeah.
How was it?
It was great, man. It's Japan is like one of the nicest countries I've ever been to.
The people are nice, the place is nice?
Yeah. It's both. It's like, it gives Montana a run for its money, believe it or not.
Wow.
I know, like, I did not realize there was like amazing landscape and mountains in Japan, but like, yeah, they have everything. Beaches, they have snowboarding. It's like California, but everyone speaks Japanese.
So, I was gonna get into some like serious questions about minimalism, but I mean, you spent some time in Tokyo, which is it makes cities like New York seem like mid-sized towns.
Oh, it like Tokyo is, it's literally, I guess it depends on what demographic you're looking at. I think like square miles, it's like the biggest city in the world. It holds the biggest city in the world for one of those demographics.
Okay, yeah.
But it literally is, it's like 5 New York cities in one.
I've noticed, like, so around the same time that this whole minimalism movement really caught fire in the late '80s, early teens here, it also there was a parallel movement over in Japan as well. And I'm really inspired, not necessarily by feng shui, but by the type of minimalism that I'm into is architecture and bare bones. I mean, I think one of the things about minimalism for me is the bones or the beauty of the thing. And so if you have a beautiful object, or if you have a home that is beautiful without all the accoutrements, that I noticed a lot of that is going on in Japan right now.
Yeah, it's so we were in an Airbnb. We actually stayed with a couple friends. So Josh Wagner and Alexa, who I know I've talked about on the podcast before, But essentially, I got a couple of friends who they teach English online, and they travel basically every 90 days to a new country because like their visas run out after 90 days. And it's funny because like people will come up to me and they're like, well, Colin Wright in your documentary, he must be a millionaire. Like there's only, like you can only be a millionaire to travel like that. And these guys are not millionaires by any stretch. I mean,
they're starving artists, basically.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Like I was trying not to like coin them as starving artists, but yeah, I mean, yeah, they're pretty much starving artists. So I told him, I was like, if you ever make it over to Tokyo, they were talking about how they might get over that way. I told him that, you know, Mariah and I would totally go out there and visit, but we were staying with them in an Airbnb. It was 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and it was super tiny. I want to say like maybe 600 square feet, but
that's pretty big for over there, I think.
Yeah. It was it was very well crafted. Like it was an apartment, but it felt like a tiny home. But it wasn't like uncomfortable to where we were on top of each other. We couldn't like hear each other's bathroom noises. Like it was fine. But no, it was great. I was really impressed with how all the spaces we went to, like other people's apartment or homes, or whether it was a coffee shop or a restaurant. It's amazing like what they could fit into such a small place. The bathrooms specifically, it's like you walk into this little sushi place where like they can't even have chairs. It was one of the best sushi places I ate when I was there. They don't even have chairs. Like you have to stand and eat sushi, and you're like, oh, they definitely don't have a restroom. And Mariah was like, oh, do you have a restroom? And the guy behind the counter was like, oh yeah, it's over there. And I'm like, oh wow, like they actually, like this place is so small, but they can still have a restroom. And she went and she came back out. She was like, they have like a toilet and a sink and everything. And I went in there and it was like no bigger than like a closet, like a small closet. But they were just able to like fit everything. And I don't know. They're just very deliberate with how they put all their stuff in the space that they have.
So we talked to a few folks who own tiny homes. We don't have tiny houses ourselves, but we have appropriately sized houses for us. And I mean, it'd be really, I have a 3-year-old now, and I call her Hurricane Ella. And sometimes, I can't imagine living in a tiny home with her. But I could see I could see a time when it would be appropriate. But the thing that I noticed with the people that we talked to who lived in these tiny homes when we were recording our documentary was, they have to make some tough decisions with their space. They're tough at first, but they're important decisions. And later on, they're like, man, I'm so glad that it's a weird way of forcing yourself to be intentional. It's these creative restrictions or creative limitations that force you to bring in only that which is essential. When I was giving the talk earlier, I was talking about the things that I own now serve a purpose, or they bring me joy, and everything else is out of the way. And I really saw that personified in the tiny houses, and it sounds like you saw a lot of that in Japan.
Yeah, I mean, we were saying like they had no choice but to do that.
Yeah.
I mean,
otherwise you'd be like my neighbor. There's the ultimate irony here. The person across the street from my house, it's like the minimalists and then the hoarders. Quite literally, and I'm not judging them. I mean, literally, they don't have blinds; they just have boxes stacked up. And what I've come to realize is that's the terminus of it, right? Now, I was a well-organized hoarder because I collected a lot of stuff, and I had an ordinal system of boxes and bins, and I found a way to hide my hoarding really well, and when you have a space like that, it's much, much harder to hide the hoarding. I had an attic and a basement and a garage and a storage locker on the edge of town. Anyway, welcome back to the States, Ryan.
Thanks, man.
Oh, by the way, he sent me a picture while he was over there. He had a lot of sushi while he was there. And you won't be clapping in a moment. He sent me this picture, and I was certain he had a stroke. And my partner, Rebecca, she is a registered dietitian, and she was like, oh, he has facial paralysis from food poisoning. And he ate so much sushi that his left eye just stopped working. I shit you not.
Yeah, it's funny now. It's funny now. I was not laughing at the time. I will say though, like I went to the hospital and dude, it was like I would never get that experience. Well, first off, I never get that experience in an ER in the States. I mean, like I got there and they were just like, "How can we help you?" And we'll find someone who speaks English. And then like it was Golden Week, which is like the one, I want to say like super holiday that they all take over there. Like everyone's off that week, including the ER doctors. So they're like, sorry, there's no doctor here here to look at your eye.
Sorry, there's no emergencies this week.
But they like they went out of their way to like find another doctor who was available, who spoke English. I mean, it was really awesome. And like the eye doctor visit, the eye drops that they gave me, it was like $60. I mean, I was just like, I had no insurance. Well, I mean, I have insurance. I didn't have travel insurance because I'm like, I'm not going to need travel insurance. But I mean, really though, the travel insurance probably would have cost me $60. But yeah, at the end of the day, it was like Mariah. She used to work at an eye clinic and to see an ophthalmologist. Yeah, it's like $350. So yeah, it just blew me away. And especially how kind the people are over there. But anyway.
Well, I'm glad you're back, and I'm glad we are here in Spokane. Thank you all for being here tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We've got some fine folks getting ready to ask some questions. If you just say what your name is and if you're from here or if you're from somewhere else and whatever your question is, we're happy to help out.
I'm James. I'm from Spokane.
Howdy.
I just wanted to say thank you, Josh and Ryan, for coming to Spokane.
Oh, man, our pleasure.
Hopefully you got some time to do some sensory deprivation time. My question is, I have a lot of stuff. I'm okay with it. I'm working on getting rid of it. My problem is I have a lot of hobbies, a lot of passions, and I'm trying to minimize which passions are no longer adding value, which ones is it's time to let go. How do I help myself get rid of those?
So let's talk about that. What are some of those passions? Like if you were to say, my top 3 passions are blank, what are those blanks?
There'd be auto mechanic work, like on the side.
Okay. You're passionate about working on cars?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Hunting and fishing.
Okay, that's 3.
See, that's the problem.
Do you see how we chunk things together? Yep. I love working on cars while I'm skydiving. It's one passion. Now give me 2 more. You got some more. That's great.
I brew beer.
Okay.
And then I like gardening.
Okay. Good deal. Well, I've got some good news for you. You can do all of those things. You can't do them all at once. And I think that was important for me to realize, right? Especially when I was trying to figure out how do I pursue and really cultivate a passion is a better word that I would look into is thinking about my passions not as these exciting tasks that always make me perpetually happy. You'll get some joy from those things, but I want to delineate hobbies from passions in this instance for you. I think your hobbies can be your passion, and I'm totally fine with that. In fact, I hope that you're passionate about your hobbies, otherwise it's a total waste of time. I had hobbies back in my old 20s where I didn't even enjoy the task. It's like if you have a stamp collection, but you hate stamps, but you're like, well, it's what I'm supposed to do. And so what I would encourage you to do is figure out what your priorities are right now. And here's the good news. I don't know, how old are you right now, James?
I will be 36 on Monday.
Oh, nice. Well, we're the same age then. So what I've learned is that sometimes I'll be really passionate about a thing, and I can stack other passions on top of that over time. When Ryan and I first started the minimalists.com, that was six and a half years ago, and up until that point, I had written a lot of fiction. That's what my passion was, just writing fiction. And Ryan came to me with this idea of, hey man, I think some people will get value from the story. You're pretty good at writing. Do you think that will translate over to nonfiction? And some of it did. And that's where it started. So we started writing essays online. We didn't even know it was called a blog at the time. We couldn't figure it out. I couldn't spell HTML. So we figured out how to cobble together this website, and we started writing on there. And after about a year, people kept asking us about when are you guys going to write a book? You're writing all these different essays online about simple living. Can you distill this down into one book? And so eventually we did, and we wrote a book called Minimalism: Live a Meaningful Life. And one of the chapters in there is about passions. And I don't want to feel like I'm selling you that book. So Jess, if you're around here somewhere, if I could give James a copy of Minimalism: Live a Meaningful Life at some point, I'd appreciate it. Something happened. What's the sound of one person clapping? That's what I call a faux fundity, by the way. So I've learned that we started writing the essays, then we wrote a book, and then eventually, I wanted to get back to the writing of fiction, and really what that was storytelling for me. So I went back and said, with fiction, what about that really resonates with me? And it was the narrative part of things. So Ryan and I moved out to Montana in this cabin in the middle of nowhere, and we wrote our second book called Everything That Remains, and it was a memoir, so it had many of the fictive elements in it. So that was a different passion I was able to stack on top of that. There's a guy named Scott Adams. Do you know who Scott Adams is? Anyone in here? He writes that Dilbert cartoon. Y'all know that one, right? Well, he talks about skill stacking, and I think of passion can be the same way. So with skill stacking, he'll say, like with drawing, for example, he draws his cartoon. He'll say, I am not in the top 1% of drawers in the world, but he has one of the 1% of most successful cartoons in the world. Well, why is that? Well, it's because he has these other skills that he's incorporated with that. His other skill is storytelling. He's not in the top 1% of that either, but he's in the top 20% of drawing, top 20% of storytelling, and then business-wise, he's a decent business person. He's like, I'm in the top 20, 30% of running a business, and that was part of getting those cartoons out into the world. So not the best businessman, not the best cartoonist, not the best storyteller, but you stack those skills together, you find a way to blend them, and all of a sudden, you're in the best 1% of the cartoon, storyteller, businessmen in the world, and that's why he was so successful with that. And then you also have to ask yourself some questions. Well, why do you want to do this? And the reason I ask questions like that is sometimes you might say, well, I want to make a living off of this. And I always encourage people to be careful with that. I think it's great if you can do that, but don't let money be your primary driver for your passions. Your passions should align with your values and your beliefs, and if you can earn some income off of that on the side, that's great. But when it becomes the primary driver, the creativity in it usually, not always, but quite often gets tainted. And one last thing is, if you're 36 years old right now, you can be passionate about something for the next 5 years, and you can be passionate about something else the following 5 years. And then 5 years after that, you might discover there's another passion that you have. You weren't born to be a mechanic or a yoga instructor or an astronaut. The truth is that there are dozens, if not hundreds of things you could be passionate about. The key is to pick one, work at it hard, drudge through the drudgery, and be willing to let go of the other things, at least temporarily, so you can focus on that, so you can cultivate it into a passion. That's my short answer.
Man, I live in Montana, so there's like a lot of things to be passionate about out in Montana. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it's so right now I longboard, I snowboard. I don't have a wakeboard, but I love to wakeboard. Pretty much anything that has a board on it, I really like, except for waterboarding.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it.
But so I got a longboard, I got a snowboard, mountain bike. Those are like kind of my three biggest things the three biggest hobbies that I have. And the mountain bike, not too bad. Like I got a helmet that doubles as like my snowboarding helmet. Not a ton of stuff that comes along with that. My longboard, that's pretty much all I have. Again, helmet doubles for that too. I probably should get some like knee pads and stuff. I don't really attempt anything too crazy. Snowboarding, there's a ton of stuff that comes with that. I mean, like gloves and long johns, yeah. So for me, like the key with, well, one of the keys, I guess, with like my hobbies is like I have one of what I need. So I don't have 2 snowboarding jackets. I don't have 3 sets of snow pants. I don't have, I literally have one pair of long johns that I'll wear when I go snowboarding. I used to have two pair for those like really, really cold days, but then I got a really good pair of snow pants to where like I really don't need two pairs of long johns no matter how cold it gets. I'm like knocking on wood because I'm just envisioning next winter like it getting down to like, negative 40 or something. I'll be regretting that statement. But if that happens, great. Like I'll go buy another pair of long johns if I really absolutely need it. I mean, they're not that hard to pick up. But when it comes to like other hobbies that I want to introduce into my life, like I can tell you right now, dude, like I used to fish all the time. Being from Ohio, I mean, there's just so many opportunities, whether it was like in a nice big lake in Ohio or a creek, or like my buddy, he just lived in like this trailer park that had a pond in there, and like we would fish for hours on that pond, and I loved it, man. I somehow lost that along the way, like when I started my whole corporate career, that kind of fell by the wayside. And I remember like giving him all my fishing stuff because he was like kept calling me for fishing trips, and like I just never really made it a priority. But I would love to pick up fly fishing, man. Like living in Missoula, Montana. I mean, this is where they filmed The River Runs Through It. I mean, like you almost have to fly fish if you live in Missoula, Montana, right? But I know that I've got to say no to fly fishing, so I can say yes to the other hobbies that I have. So I can say yes to going on tour. So I can say yes to so many other things. So, I think where I would start if I was you is what is saying no to being a part-time mechanic? Like, what does that open up for you? And I'm not like encouraging you to stop working on cars. But ask yourself that question, like what would I do with that time? What would I do with that space if I was able to say no to working on cars? Like what would that make room in my life for? And that's really kind of how I look at my hobbies. It's like, why would I say no to something? And then that's usually where I get the why. And Josh talked about that in the beginning of his talk, or I should say at the beginning of his minimalist journey of asking that question of, how might my life be better with less? And that's the same question you need to ask yourself. How might your life be better with less hobbies? And you know what? You may ask yourself that question and be like, you know what? There's really nothing that I would be able to do at that time any better than what I do now. But the fact that you're asking us that question tells me that there is something there. So I would dig a little bit deeper there and just kind of look at it as a way of like, you've got to say no to some things so you can say yes to other things in your life. And what are those things that you want to say yes to?
I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate that.
Hi,
Howdy.
I'm Ashley. I'm from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Hey, Ashley.
I love Coeur d'Alene.
Thanks for making the drive over.
Absolutely, it's quick and easy, so thank you very much. So.
Jessica was asleep when we were driving through Coeur d'Alene. I didn't want to wake her up, but like she was in the back seat just snoring. And Jess handles all of our social media, and she also. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, Jessica Williams.
Yes.
She also straightens Ryan's hair.
It looks
You
really
said
good.
you would never speak of that.
You said I should never speak of it.
Oh.
So I just wanted to say thank you guys, because it's nice to see you guys get out of your comfort zone, and a lot of us find value in that, so thank you. So I'm in a really great part of my life where I'm kind of being, self-reflective and introspective and trying to focus on relationships. And so I'm curious about your guys' take on the value you bring to a relationship and what you do for a person. So, for instance, I've actually experienced a couple incidences recently where it turns out that I might not be providing as much value as I thought I was. So I'm interested in what your take is on that.
Man, that's super honest. Thank you for that. You don't have to go into any more detail if you don't want to, but can you? Is there any way to expand maybe a little bit on that so I can try to expand on that even farther?
I think it's just kind of a difference of what everyone is going through in their life. So I've recently split from a relationship, and then it's impacted a group of my friends. And so a lot of people thought, that I was a really good friend, and then a handful thought I wasn't. So it's interesting to kind of discuss that with different perspectives and different people in that group. And so it's just been a good part of my life to go, okay, maybe I'm not bringing as much value as I thought I was to these relationships. And so I wonder what your guys' take was on that, because you talk a lot about value and what you do for other people. And I wonder, what I think I bring to someone else's life may not be as valuable to them.
Sure.
So I wonder what you guys think about that.
And maybe it can't be as valuable either. I mean, I think that's another important thing to realize. Like, there are some authors who I've gotten immense value from. There's no way I could possibly pay them back. So I want you to realize a few things. One is it's not quid pro quo. It's not, well, I have to give 1 unit of contribution and I expect to take 1 unit of contribution from this relationship. But that said, it does sort of work that way. I think every relationship, whether it's an intimate relationship, a friendship, an acquaintance, a networking buddy, a boss, a employee, whatever it may be, every relationship has what I would call an us box. And it took me until I was 31, 32 years old to figure this out. My first sort of long relationship after my marriage ended, I realized something as I was going through that. It was a year long, and it was truly amazing. It was outstanding. And then around the year mark, it started to get kind of stale. And I found myself pulling away a little bit because I didn't give it much thought. I didn't start cerebrating on what the issues were or whatever. I just said, to get back to where it was, or maybe it's just comfortable now, or we start making up all these little excuses in our head. Eventually, it sort of fizzled out. It waned back and forth for a while. And afterward, I did a lot of reflection. And what I learned is that relationship had an us box. And it was when it was going really great, I was giving whatever I could give, and she was also giving whatever she could give to the relationship. And we were both taking from that us box as well, taking what we needed from that relationship. And I think both sides are really important, because if I just give, I'm going to feel worn out. I'm going to feel used as well. I'm sure we've all experienced this with some sort of relationship where we have someone who always plays the victim role in their life. Well, victims become victimizers. And what I realized is, in a way, over time, I was giving less, and just a little bit less. 3 less units of contribution this month, or whatever it may be, right? But I was still taking the same amount that I needed. I was taking what I needed, and so of course she had to give more, and was becoming more depleted, and she felt used. And of course, if you're just taking more than you can give, well, then you're a parasite, right? I mean, it's by definition, that's what a parasite does. It feeds off of other living things. And I was the parasite in that relationship. I didn't mean to be, and I cared about her, and I still think she's a great person. But what I realized from that is, man, I need to be able to show up and give whatever I can give. And I also need to realize sometimes I can give a whole lot more than they can. And other times, I can't give as much as they can give, and I have to be okay with that as well. And so I think remembering that is critical for any relationship, even if it's just a friend or an acquaintance. Realize that, do an assessment or an inventory of the relationship. What am I taking? What am I contributing? And then you can also look at some of your relationships and reprioritize them. So Jess, I hate to make you run a million different errands here, but if you can give her a copy of Everything That Remains, it's that second book that we wrote, but there's a whole chapter in there about that sort of journey of discovering the us box in my own life.
Yeah, I mean, just to expound, and this might be a little bit of an aside to your question, but to expound on the whole unit, keeping track of the units, like holding account is probably the worst thing you can do in a relationship. Like, if I was to sit here and think about every time, like, Josh and I had some kind of disagreement, ever since we were fat little fifth graders, I mean, you can only imagine, like, the feelings I could probably bring up. I mean, we've never gotten any, like, crazy knockdown, drag-out fights. But, I mean, maybe in high school, like, we used to, like, play that, like punch above the waist. But that was, like, kids being kids.
Ryan used to beat my ass.
Yeah, used to. No, but in all seriousness, like, holding account, even with my romantic relationship with Mariah, like, I don't sit there and, like, recall every time that she's made me angry, because if you think about it, let's say I did that with Mariah and she did that with me, and we start off with, like, this battery meter, if you can imagine, like, at 100%, and each of us are like, we're 100% of the relationship. And then I come home from tour and I sit down and I don't, like, hug Mariah right away, or there's something that makes her mad, and that 100% meter goes down to like 98%. And then, she does something, doesn't make dinner right away. I would never get mad at her for not making dinner right away. I'm just using an example here. And then all of a sudden, like, my meter goes down 2%. And then, she gives me a kiss, and then it goes up 1%. I mean, always keeping track of that. The problem is to keep it at 100% is going to be impossible. And eventually it's going to it's a net zero game, essentially. So, I would first say, like, don't try to keep track of, who has done what for whom. If anything, I would encourage you to, so like with Mariah, I'll stick with that example. Like, I will ask myself on a daily basis, even if, like, I have done something to really, like, make her frustrated or angry at me, or vice versa. Again, like, we don't have fights, but even if that was the case, I would ask myself, like, what have I done today to add value to Mariah's life? Like, let's say I am in this position where I'm like, oh, I'm angry for these reasons. Like, I still would ask myself, like, if I wanted to really maintain that relationship, I would still go out of my way to do something to add value to her life. Like, how have I showed her today that I love her? So, I mean, I would start there with people who are really, really important in your life, is asking, if you can't do it every day, then do it every other day. Like, what have I done to show this person that I love them? And then if all else fails, you can always go to that person and ask them, like, hey, what else can I do for you? Like, I really want to do, don't even ask them, like, just tell them, like, I want to do something for you. Tell me what that one thing is, or tell me 2 things I can do to really help you out right now. To say, I'm here if you need me, I mean, everyone says that, but to go to them and, like, take as much action as possible, like, that's really going to show them how much you care. But yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, don't feel bad if you're not giving as much as you'd like to, or if you feel like you're giving less, unless they come to you and say, hey, you're giving less. Like, really, that's probably not an issue. Like, when it comes to like the minimalists.com, like, when I have to go to WordPress and do something on the website, I'm like calling Josh, like, dude, I'm like a monkey on a keyboard. Like, I have no idea how to do this. Like, he definitely contributes more on that stuff. But at the end of the day, there are other things that I will do for Josh that, shows him that I'm invested in this just as much as he is. So, if they haven't came to you and said, you're not doing enough, then I wouldn't, like, let that weigh too much on your shoulders. But if it really is, then go to them and ask them, like, hey, what more can I do for you?
I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Howdy.
Hi, my name is also James. I've lived in Spokane for about 16 years, originally from the East Coast. And definitely do appreciate you guys coming out here. That's such a beautiful drive from Missoula, even from Bozeman. Such an amazing drive. Josh, you had talked in your monologue about those 4 boxes that your mom kept. And I wondered if maybe you could elaborate on not knowing anything about your relationship with your mom, but maybe if, the lack thereof, or, even kind of holding on to those memories, if there is any gravity that held to you. Maybe, you should have been there, could have been there, and weren't, and your mom sort of, gravitated to holding on to these memories because, as we grow older, we kind of, I don't want to say abandoned, but maybe just kind of like, parents kind of get sort of, pushed to the side, or we have our own lives.
Sure.
I just wondered if maybe you could elaborate on that.
Absolutely. It was the original Joshua Fields Milburn writings, and I
should have held on to those, man.
Yeah, they're going to be worth nothing someday. I'll tell you this: when she moved down there, I was so fucking busy that I didn't. I mean, if I have one regret in life, it's that I didn't spend more time with her, especially in her time of need.
Yeah, for sure. I feel that.
And I didn't even. It didn't even come to my mind that I should at the time. That's how involved I was in the minutia of the unimportant. And and when I look back at it now, and it's the meetings and the being on my BlackBerry curve. Someone clap at the BlackBerry curve.
It's because they still have a BlackBerry curve.
Well, I mean, so I would get 250 emails a day that required a response, and at one point I managed 150 retail stores, and that all seemed so important to me at the time.
Well, I remember when you went to take off work to go spend time with your mom, how much of a hard time our bosses gave you, man.
Yeah, I mean, once I took I'm going to take a week of vacation this vacation time. It wasn't, and my boss was like, must be nice. You must be a dick. I mean, the funny thing is, I didn't have the balls to say that at the time, and now I have no problem saying that whatsoever. But I think the reason that she held on to that stuff had little to do with hers and my relationship, because she'd been holding on to that stuff since elementary. It was literally sealed since elementary, and it moved from house to house to house. And I mean, you all have experienced this, right? Where you have those boxes that you move, and the next time you go to move, you still haven't opened the box that you moved. It was essentially the same thing there with her. Did we spend enough time together? No. I mean, I think our relationship was pretty strained, especially growing up. She was a really bad alcoholic, and I had a really shitty childhood, and I wouldn't say that I resented that. In fact, now I'm great. I didn't really know how poor we were growing up, because you don't know when you're in the middle of it, right? It's like a fish doesn't know what water is. It's just there, and so I found that as I distanced myself from that, I didn't actually distance myself from it, because I got the corporate job and started making good money, but I was spending even better money. And so really all I was doing was repeating bad decisions. So we didn't have any money growing up, and we weren't happy but there wasn't a direct correlation there. We weren't happy because of repeated bad decisions. And money just amplified those bad decisions into my 20s, including and especially not being able to spend enough time with her when she needed it the most. Yeah, I still think about that now.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, James. Howdy. We're gonna do one last long-winded one, and then Ryan and I will battle it out up here.
Okay.
Hey there.
Can you hear me okay? My name's Cammie.
Hey, Cammie.
Hey, Cammie.
Hi.
We saw you earlier today.
We
Yes.
did, yeah.
I just
want to
want
talk about that real quick?
Yeah, why don't you talk about why we came and saw you earlier?
Well, I'm still learning, but Spokane has the Jonas Project, and the Jonas Project helps get young girls particularly out of sex trafficking. And so they've started a kind of pop-up sale that's going to be happening in Spokane periodically to raise money to help fund these safe houses. I'm probably doing a terrible job of explaining it.
You're doing great so
But
far.
it was inspired through your podcast. My friend Billy I think was the spearhead for that, and she just decided let's get rid of our stuff to help fund something that's going to help women and girls who
Yes, you guys are awesome. You guys are so awesome. I mean, they literally, you should have seen all the things that they had, and it was all started through the 30-day minimalism game. It was, it's really, I mean, honestly,
Billy.
that's why Josh and I do this.
Look, she came up. She can explain it better.
Okay, go for it.
She did good. She did really good. Okay, so a designer at Rainmaker Creative, which is Sophie's here, wherever Sophie is, said you got to see the minimalism documentary.
Sophie's Adam's wife, right?
Yes.
Adam is doing the sound and the lights tonight, so if you laughed at my joke when the lights went out earlier, that's because Adam was right on cue. So thank you so much, Adam. Give him a round of applause.
Yeah.
So cool. Anyway, so I watched it. She was right. I loved it, and started following you guys and learned about the minimalism game with the day one, you get rid of one thing, and day two things, and then by the end of the month, there's 500 things and gone. And so I just posted on Facebook that I was going to do it, and then 14 other people said they were going to do it, and miraculously, we were also looking for a way to fund the Jonas Project. And so it just all kind of came together, and we said, oh my gosh, that's 7,500 items. What are we going to do with all that? And so anyway, you guys, thank you.
I love it. No, thank you. Like I said, that's why Josh and I do this. Like if we can inspire those types of actions in communities everywhere, and we do to a certain extent, but like that is huge. Thank you guys for pulling together and doing that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Cammie, I'm so sorry to derail your question.
No, that's
Please.
good. That's way more important. Okay, so my first world problem is paper. I have a 4-drawer file cabinet at home.
There's a piece of paper in her hand right now.
Oh my gosh! Oh, hang on.
Ryan,
yeah, this is like evidence.
grab the shredder.
Hang on. So this is my ticket to get in. I didn't know how to like keep it on my phone. I think you just screenshot it, but I didn't know that. So I printed it, and then I forgot it. And my husband happened to be home, and I didn't know how to get it to me. So I was like, honey, can you use our landline fax machine and just fax it to my work?
Well, what's a fax machine?
Right. So now you know what you're dealing with, right? So like this is me. I'm like between Gen X and millennials.
Yeah.
But I feel more like a baby boomer as far as technology. I have so much paper, and I don't know what to do with it. And I don't trust, like I have tape over my computer camera. I've never Skyped. Like I don't know what, this thing called the cloud, I've heard of it, you know. And here's the the thing is like I text, I'm actually a real estate agent. I know how to get electronic signatures. I keep my paper footprint as low as possible, but how do I actually manage the important papers in a way that, you know, conspiracy theory Jane here like feels good about? Yeah.
I gave her a DVD earlier today.
Yeah. I'm gonna share with at least 20 people.
I think one of the big problems that we have in today's world is we're overwhelmed with the bad decisions of yesteryear, and I don't mean like actual like terrible decisions. I just mean like I'll just stick this receipt in this drawer to deal with it later. The reason Ryan literally had 7 junk drawers is because when junk drawer number 1 filled up, it just was forgotten. And then you move on to junk drawer number 2. And I know this because I did the same thing, right? My junk drawers were a bit more orderly. I'm really OCD. And still, though, like, we hold on to these things. Why?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, what papers are you holding on to that you're like, I gotta have these papers? Right. I'm just curious. Just give me a couple examples.
Gosh, a couple examples?
Or just one.
Some are kind of like sentimental medical records.
Okay.
Wait a minute.
Josh, do you remember that time I had appendicitis?
Yeah, man, I took a picture of the appendicitis and it let me get rid of the... No, it's funny, like, actually, you just illustrated a great example. Like, if we say something out loud, we realize how absurd it becomes. Right? Because there are times where I'm like, I couldn't live without this t-shirt. But as soon as I say that out loud, I'm like, get the fuck out of here. But that's like, I used to go shopping as a hobby. You know, 93% of teenagers list shopping as their favorite pastime. We have more shopping malls than high schools in this country. And we talk about we have an education problem. I mean, I think we have an addiction problem as well, a bad habit problem. And I think that habit extends over into keeping these things. And the question I was asking earlier is, why do we do that? It's just in case, right? I'm going to hold on to this just in case. It's generally not for sentimental reasons. And so I'll talk to you about delineating the two. If it's a just-in-case item, meaning I might need this someday in some hypothetical future, then give yourself permission to let go of it. Because the truth is that over 99% of the things you're holding on to just in case, you'll never need at all. Now, Ryan and I came up with something called the 20-20 rule. It applies to physical items, but I'm sure it would apply to paperwork in at least most scenarios. 20-20 rule. Anything you're holding on to just in case, you can get rid of and replace for less than $20 in less than 20 minutes from wherever you are. Now you might say, well, Josh, that is a rule of privilege. I don't want to have to go out every day and spend $20 to replace all my just-in-case items. Between the two of us, we've had to use that rule 5 times in the last 5 years, and that's a hell of an insurance policy right there.
We lived in the middle of nowhere, Montana. Phillipsburg, Montana, if anyone is familiar. Oh, wow, okay. You've been to the candy store. Or you've been to Discovery, which actually is pretty... The taffy is delicious. But no, I mean, it's one stoplight in how many miles?
It's one. When we lived there, I know there was one stoplight in 3,400 square miles.
And like that rule held up even in that town of like 870, like 4 bars, 1 church town.
There's 4 bars, 4 churches.
I mean, in the summertime, I think the population increased a little bit. But yeah, I mean, just to this point of like that rule it's in this society, even in the middle of nowhere, it still holds pretty well.
Yeah, one last thing I will tell you that I think is even more important, especially for paperwork. Ryan earlier talked about his packing party. Do you know why we call it a packing party? Because if you put party at the end of anything, Ryan shows up. And shortly after the packing party, I had something called a scanning party.
I brought the beer.
There are nice digital scanners out there right now. In fact, if you just go to theminimalists.com/scanning, you can see the exact scanner that I use and that we share. Actually, all of us share. We just pass it around. And what you'll do is you take it's not those old scanners that used to like lift up the lid and put a piece of paper on, wait 15 minutes to get a blurry upside down copy of something. It's an actual, like, you just feed photos or documents through it, and they scan relatively quickly. And what you do is you make a weekend day of it or an entire weekend of it, get all your old photographs. Because, by the way, your old photographs, no one's looking at them in the basement or the attic or the closet, right? Or even worse, if you put them in a photo album and then force that onto your company. They hate that. But here's the weird thing. If you put it in a digital picture frame, people, we're just drawing the screens. All of a sudden, we start congregating around this little digital picture frame when you go to someone's house. And so you can do that now. You can even upload new pictures from your phone directly to the digital picture frame without having to go through your computer or anything else. So what I'm going to say is it's going to take you a day or an entire weekend to do this scanning party for all your documents. And you're going to realize how absurd holding on to most of them were. You're like, I'm not going to scan this one. Well, then you get rid of it. And the ones you do scan, now you have it backed up. Now you said you're paranoid, the cloud is terrifying. You don't have to use the cloud. I use Dropbox personally, and I know that they're redundant and secure as it can be for the cloud. But I also have an external hard drive. You buy, a 1 terabyte hard drive, and it's going to hold all your photos and all your documents for a very long time, and it's probably going to cost you $60. And that's worth a lot more to me. So it's on my computer, it's on my hard drive, my external hard drive, and then it's in the cloud as well. So I have this sort of triple redundancy. But yeah, go to theminimalists.com/scanning, and you'll see like the whole scanning party thing there. It'll help you out a lot.
I'll tell you, after the packing party, that was so much fun. No, I mean, and after I went through all my stuff and I had all that stuff left over, like Josh came over and he's helping me just get rid of different stuff. Like I remember I'm going through like each box and I'm like, do I need this USB cable? Do I need this? And I see Josh and he's just like sweeping things into like this 50-gallon trash bag.
It is so much easier to get rid of other people's stuff.
And I'm like, no, dude. I'm like, I might need that coffee mug that says "World's #1 Dad" on it. I had 50 other coffee mugs, but there was like the whole just in case thing. Like, well, what if 49 of them break? And Josh helped me to kind of come up with this rule where I'm like, you know what? If I haven't used this thing in like the last year, I've got to be honest with myself and be like, all right, am I going to use this within the next year? And if the answer was no on both sides of that, then I felt comfortable either like donating it or selling it. Now I usually go by probably 6 months. But it's really 90 days. But like with snowboarding, there's like a couple things I have to extend that a little bit. There's always exceptions to the rules, right? But it helps me keep a lot of the clutter out of my life. But I remember I was, like Josh had left, and I'd pretty much sorted everything, and I was kind of, doing the rest on my own. And I came across this shoebox I had with a lot of, like, high school memories in it. Like, I had, just, like, a picture of, like, me and my prom dates, and, like, a shot glass they gave us for our senior year prom gift, which is, like, the worst gift you can give an 18-year-old kid. And I remember there were these letters that my mom wrote me in high school. And like these letters, like the memory of those letters, like just thinking about just the heartfelt things that she wrote in there, it really made it hard for me to like just, and I hadn't looked at those letters in years. It made it really hard for me to just like get rid of that stuff. And I remember like holding on that shoebox and I'm like, you're a minimalist now, dude. You got to get rid of this. And I'm like, going, like trying to go to the trash can, like I can't do it. Like this stuff really means a lot to me. So I got one of the letters out and I read the letter, and it was really weird. Like the memory I had of the letter versus reading the letter evoked two completely different emotions. The memory I had when I thought about the letter was much stronger. And it meant much more to me than when I actually read the letter, if that makes any sense. Yeah. And after I did that, I was like, oh, wow, like this doesn't really mean that much to me anymore. Like the memory of it meant way more to me than like what it actually said. I agreed to like, okay, I'm gonna snap a picture of it. I didn't even scan it. I just like snapped a picture of it. And
by the way, we had a listener that called in recently. You can do this. There's a new app now. I think it's called, sorry to derail it here, but
there's a couple that...
Yeah, it's called Tiny Scan, I think.
Yeah, and it like converts it into PDFs, right?
Yeah. It'll upload right to your computer or whatever you want it to do.
Yeah, so I took a picture of it. So technically I still had it, and I threw the letter away. And I just thought to myself, like, worst case scenario, I can totally get that in the morning, like if I can't sleep at night. And I didn't even think about that letter until I went to take out the trash the next night, and it was like sitting there on top, and I was like, oh yeah. And after like realizing how it was kind of important because I said it was important. And then I just kind of like flipped this switch and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to read all these letters. I'm not going to hold on to these silly high school memories because it's not that I didn't have a good time in high school as much as I really wanted to move forward with my life rather than like live in my high school memories. And I got rid of pretty much everything in that shoebox. Well, no, I did get rid of everything, but like I took pictures of a few things. And that helped me out a lot. I was going to recommend, like, yeah, there's total apps that you can get to take pictures of and upload to PDFs, but you got a fax machine. And this fax machine, actually, what you can do with that is you can get a phone number, like a Google Voice. I haven't done this since like the corporate days when we use fax machines there, but I know that still you can get a phone number that you can fax stuff to, and it goes to your email. So you really don't even need to go buy a scanning device. I mean, unless you got some pictures you want to get rid of, fax copy of pictures are probably going to be kind of crap. But just with the medical paperwork that you're talking about, I mean, that stuff, that's a pretty easy fix. And I would encourage you to do the same thing I did. Like, pull that stuff. When's the last time you looked at it?
3 years ago.
Okay. So it is something that you look at a lot. Great. No, I think that's awesome. I mean,
she said 3 years ago.
Oh, I thought she said 3 days. Three years ago. Okay, so you don't look at it quite so much. All right, so if it was 3 years ago, then okay. All right, good. My point is making sense then. But even if you did say 3 days ago, you know what? That's great. Like I would be glad that you're getting value out of it. But you don't have to have that physical thing to like continue to get value out of it. But yeah, if you haven't looked at it in 3 years, I would encourage you to go through your stuff and start looking at that and really see what kind of emotion it evokes when you look at it. Because I guarantee you're going to experience at least some of that, what I went through with the memory of it versus looking at that piece of paper. You're probably going to have two different emotions that are going to be sparked. Here's the thing, though. You got a lot of paperwork. It's going to be hard. Yeah. This is not easy. I mean, that's why, and when I give that talk, I'm like, I'm not talking about a perfect life, not even an easy life, because it's too often we mistake simple with easy, and simple is not easy. So I'm just trying to set you with the right expectation. This is going to be hard work, and you are going to have to formulate a plan, but you've got to take action on that plan. But if you can find your partner or a friend or a family member who can come help you, it'll totally help lighten up the load. Get a bottle of wine, make it a party. But yeah, I mean, you do have to take action on it, and it's not going to be easy. It is going to be difficult. But what I'll tell you is, once you get through it, you're going to feel so much better. And then if you can come up with a system to keep that paperwork kind of moving through, like with my taxes, I do not have any hard copies of my taxes anymore. Wow. Like anything that I had from what did they say? 6 years? Is that 4 years? I hold on to 6 years. I don't know what it is.
7.
Uh-oh.
Ryan, we need your records from 2009.
But my point is that if I needed that 7th year, I could go to my CPA at the time or my accountant at the time, or I think I was using like TurboTax 7 years ago, and I know I can log onto my account and get those records. That is the CPA that I use isn't just self-employed. It's a huge company. I have email records of it. They have records of it. I have it in the cloud. I'm sure I'll be able to get a hold of it. But my point is that there are very few Social Security card, birth certificate, passport. There are very few records that you actually need to have physical copies of. Which reminds me, I lost my Social Security card. I got to get another one of those. That was like a year ago. And
Can you wait till after the podcast?
What's that?
So can you wait till after the podcast?
Yeah, I'll wait till after. But yeah, I mean, I guess my point is, my long point is, no, a lot of these things we do talk ourselves into needing physical copies of it. And in this day and age, like, we are in a culture of access, and things are much more accessible than what they were 50 years ago. So good luck on your journey. Tweet us if we can help. Call in to the podcast if you got any other questions that come up. But Cammie, you got to formulate a plan and you got to act on it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, before we move on, real quick, for the people who are listening at home, or if you want to pull out your phones for some reason to do this, if you have a comment or tip for anyone who asked a question today, you can leave us a voicemail, 406-219-7839, or you can also send a voice memo from your phone. You can email it over to podcast@theminimalists.com. We will air our favorite comments and tips on the next episode. Ryan, what time is it?
You know, I used to have fun with the lightning round until you gamified it. But yes, it is time for our #AskTheMinimalists lightning round.
We usually do questions from Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. We're at The Minimalists on all of those platforms. And but since you're here right now, you can ask your question, and we'll try to give you a short, pithy, less than 140 character response that is tweetable. By the way, if you're tweeting tonight or Instagramming or MySpacing or whatever you kids do these days, you can use #LessIsNow, and we'll repost a lot of our favorite photos and quotes and all that other fun stuff. Howdy, what's your name?
Hi, my name's Jessica, and I'm from Alaska. You should totally go there, by the way.
We want to. You didn't come down from Alaska, did you?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I wish I would have. But actually,
I was going to say, we've been to all 49 states except Alaska, so
yes,
Anchorage will be on our list one of these days.
Good.
Yes.
Yes. I actually met you guys out at the LA screening. I used to live in Los Angeles.
Oh, awesome.
I was there for your documentary screening and Q&A.
Nice.
Cool.
I was also the person who clapped about the BlackBerry curve, because I can definitely relate to that. I used to be on my BlackBerry all the time.
Man,
so,
I miss that keyboard. That's the only thing I really loved about it.
I do miss that compared to the iPhone. But anyway, so I actually was a student out here at Eastern Washington University back in the day. Woo! Shout out to the Eagles. Anyway, I was working in Los Angeles for the last 10 years, and a friend of mine actually turned me on to your podcast. And I wanted to personally thank you for your podcast, your blog, incredible documentary.
Oh, thank you very much.
All the books.
No, keep going.
Okay. And everything else that you guys have done. Anyway, it really, you asked the question a lot, what would you be willing to give up to live a more meaningful life? And I always said that family was my number one priority. I was working in a job that I absolutely loved as an entertainment publicist. However, the job was incredibly stressful, but very creatively fulfilling. However, I gave up that job to come back out here. I reconnected with my college sweetheart, so I gave it up to come back for love. So hope to be an inspiration. My partner's out there in the crowd. Jake.
Oh, yeah. Congratulations.
So, but my question for you is, I recently went back to LA to meet up with some of my colleagues that I'd worked with. I've heard you talk a little bit about kind of leaving the corporate ladder, embracing minimalism. When I went back to see them, there were a lot of questions. Are you happy? How are you doing? How is it? I was very exuberant. However, it was also a little bit strange, because I felt like I didn't want to come across as bragging about kind of, simplifying my life, feeling like I'm living a more meaningful life. How did you go back to kind of communicate with your colleagues after you left about kind of this new journey that you were on in terms of simplifying and really finding what really matters, without, and wanting to be kind of an inspiration for them, especially for your friends that you stayed close with, without kind of coming across as being like you were bragging?
How would you answer that in a tweet, Ryan? Okay, I got one for you.
Go for it.
I like that. Don't sweat the small stuff. That's good.
That's mine. Thank you. Don't sweat the small stuff.
So I'll get down to a distilled answer here in a second. So
No, this is not fair.
you're not fair. Ryan, life isn't fair. You can tweet that. What I walked away from all of that. And the relationships that are still in my life from that time, which are very few, are people who eventually saw the light. So how would I tweet that, Ryan? I would say, when you walk away from everything, the important things follow.
Good. All right. Thank you so much.
By the way, you all are the judges to determine who wins tonight, so.
I'll say my tweetable answer and then I'll expound, because that's really how the game should be played. People hate change. People hate being changed even more. So what I mean by that is, when I go talk to my friends of yesteryear, I don't put anything in their face. Like, I don't ever say, "Hi, I'm Ryan, the minimalist." And when people ask me what I do, I go, "Snowboard." I'm like, "What are you passionate about? What do you love to do?" Actually, that's really what I'll say. "What do you do?" I'm like, "I love to snowboard." "What do you love to do?" And they're like, how do you make money?" I'm like, "You want to know how I make money?" Like, what an odd question.
I think that's the tweet.
But I don't ever explain to someone the minimalist lifestyle unless someone is really digging deep and they're really trying to understand, like, okay, what is it that makes you happy? I notice, like, you do things a little bit differently. Tell me about that. But if Josh came to me and he was like, "Hey man, dude, you're a hoarder just like me, and you really need to do this minimalism thing," I don't think I would have. I would have listened to him, I guess, because I've known him for so long. But I definitely would have been like way more defensive. Where when I went to him and I'm like, "What is going on with you, man? Like, you're really acting different in a good way, but like, why the hell are you so happy?" And that opened the door to that conversation. So, I would just encourage you to be yourself, and don't press the whole minimalism thing on people, because again, like, people, they hate change, but they hate when people try to change them even more.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jess.
Thanks.
All right, I see 4 more. We'll try to be lightning fast, Ryan. I know they want to kick us out of here eventually.
So my name's Bobby, and I come from Spokane.
Howdy.
Hey. And so my question is, I just recently graduated college, and so I'm trying to get finances together and save up for retirement or save up for a home eventually. And I've talked to a lot of my other friends who are also looking at buying homes or whatever, and a lot of them are like wanting to buy homes really soon, doing 30-year mortgages and stuff. And I've heard that you guys have said don't do that. It's a horrible idea. And I've told my friends this, and all my friends, even their parents, have said that's they're like, oh, that's a dumb idea because you can pay off a 30-year loan or 30-year mortgage sooner, and so why get a 15-year mortgage when it's just going to cost you? Like, what if something wrong happened and you couldn't pay that 15-year mortgage? And so why not have the 30-year mortgage where it's lower payments, but you can still pay it off longer? I just wanted to see what you guys thought about that, because I just think that it could be tempting to just start paying the minimum and then not getting it paid off soon enough.
So here's my short answer for you. What percentage of people pay off a 30-year mortgage in less than 30 years? That's my short answer. If I were to expand it all on it, Ryan and I wrote a long essay called Financial Freedom, 5 Difficult Steps to Get Out of Debt. And that's really what it is difficult, right? I'll never go into debt again. And if there were some strange scenario where a mortgage was right for me, I plan to own a home someday. I can't afford to buy a house outright, certainly not right now. But I have a house fund that I continue to save. There are scenarios where it might make sense. If I could have at least bare minimum 20% down, personally it'd be 50% because I want to be a little bit more conservative with my money. But so 20% minimum, and can I do at least a 15-year fixed rate? But for me, it'd be 50% down, 7-year mortgage. And if I can't afford that, then I can't afford it. So maybe that's my short answer. If you can't afford it, then you can't afford it.
Bobby, right?
Yeah.
Bobby, there is no such thing as good debt. I repeat, there is no such thing as good debt. That's my short answer. But here's what I'll say about debt. There are some debts better than others. I'd rather you go get a 30-year mortgage than a $60,000 credit card debt. I'd rather you have student loan debt than a payday loan debt on the corner of the street. There are definitely debts that are better than others, and I think some debt can be used as a tool. I think that in Josh's scenario, that's using debt as a tool to get a home. And, not everyone can afford to just buy a home outright. I certainly can't. Josh can't. If I wanted a home right now, I would have to take out a loan. Same thing, my car, the roof leaks, when it rains. I would love to have a new car right now. I'm saving up for a new car. I'll probably get one in the next couple of years. But I'm not going to go out of my way to tack on that debt payment. Because that's exactly what it is. So I live my life, I keep as many debt payments as possible out of there. Now, I've heard people be like, oh, there's, you can borrow, X amount of dollars from a bank at a 1% interest. You put it in the stock market. You can gain X amount on the stock market. I've seen equations where people do leverage debt to make money. The only time I've ever seen that work, though, is usually when someone is already well enough off. Like Mark Zuckerberg took out a mortgage on his house because he can take $1 million and put it in the stock market and make 7% year over year, where his house he's only paying 4% compound interest year over year. So he's going to make more money off having $1 million. So yeah, if you're well off, then great. There's some ways that you can leverage debt to make more money. But Bobby, there is no such thing as good debt.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think the lesson there is if you're the 6th richest man in the world, you can afford to have a mortgage.
Nice.
Howdy.
Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm from Hauser Lake, Idaho, just over the border. I was actually drugged here this evening by my son. His date kind of fell through, and I am totally new to this whole minimalist thing. So my question is more energetic. I know that you had mentioned feng shui was kind of an inspiration. So I'm wondering how deeply you've delved into the energetic aspects of being minimalist and giving up things that no longer serve you and focus on the things that add value to your life.
Let me ramble here for a second to get my short answer out. I think that there were a bunch of unexpected benefits. So my short answer. So at first for me it was my finances, right? Because I had 6 figures worth of debt, $500,000 if you count my mortgage, my 30-year mortgage, and so that was the first natural benefit for me. But from there it was health and repairing my relationships and improving my relationships and growing and contributing and finding out what I was passionate about, but also bringing in a sort of aesthetic beauty into my life and also a calmness and living not stress-free, but with less stress. And it's not about living a happy life, right? I'm not happy perpetually. I'm not a manic person. I'm happier. And I think that's important.
It's very zen.
And I'm also not I'm chasing happiness anymore, right? And so I think the short answer to that would be something like when you take a meaningful path, the benefits are plentiful.
I'll just give you my tweetable answer. The physical things we have in our life is a physical manifestation of what we have on the inside.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, last two here. Last two. We'll try to make it quick for y'all. Howdy.
Good evening, gentlemen.
How's it going?
Good evening.
Good. My name's Colton. I'm from Spokane, Washington.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for being here. So my question does not revolve around minimalism, but humility. So it's a bit of a story. My mother just sold her house, which is a big deal. And the same week, she calls me and she says, "Hey, would you like to go see the Minimalists?" And I said, "Sure." And this is big because my mom likes to shop, and she just sold her house. So I thought, this is a good time for all of this to happen. But in true fashion, she decided to go out with a bang, and she may or may not have purchased 9 tickets tonight. We have 3 people in attendance. So how do you get up here in front of everybody and stay humble? Because I told her to get up here and explain this situation, and she threatened to disown me. So I may be out of a will tonight, but I believe it was worth it to have an answer to this question.
Are you a public speaker?
I did graduate with a degree in communications.
Yeah. I can tell you've got a confidence about you that I don't think I'll ever have. And so maybe that's part of it. There are 3 things that I hate. Travel, public speaking, and large crowds of people. Doing really well tonight. No, I don't actually hate those things. They make me uncomfortable. Like, I'm a pretty good writer, and I know that. And so it's harder for me to be humble about something like that, except, when I look at the work of someone like David Foster Wallace or Mary Carr, and I'm like, oh, that's a dream. And so that's one way to stay humble. But also, I found another way for me to stay humble, and so this would be my lightning round answer to you is to stay humble, constantly put yourself in a state of discomfort.
I'll just speak to the 9 tickets. And by the way, thanks for buying 9 tickets. That's awesome. Josh and I are not allergic to money. I mean,
it was not on my dime, so thank her.
No, what I'll say is the people you love and the people that you want to see happy, you'll support them no matter what. And just to expound on that a little bit, you know, I stay humble by learning from my errors, and I still err. Like I wish I could be like, this minimalist thing, you'll just buy all our books and watch our documentary and you'll have a perfect life. It just doesn't work that way. But for me, staying humble is admitting when I've screwed up and learning from that.
Thank you both.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks a lot, man.
Howdy.
Hey guys, my name is also James. But my question
James
is...
the Third.
Right. How can we help our children to relate and to encourage them to get rid of their stuff that's not important to them when sometimes what they're holding in their hand at that time might be the most important thing in the world to them at that moment?
Thanks. No,
Ryan, you don't have kids. Can you answer this one?
Yeah. It's really easy to give advice when you don't have kids, let me tell you. No, I'm going to steal a quote from Joshua Becker's book, Clutter-Free with Kids. As parents, you get to set the boundaries for your children. And what I mean, like, here's one boundary. And I'm totally stealing this from a parent who was at one of our events. She was talking about how she hates to tell her kids no. So she's got like a little 5-year-old who will come home and be like, hey, I got this painting. I just did in, class today. Can I put it on the refrigerator? And she's like, yes, you can't put that on the refrigerator. Then they walk over there and like the refrigerator's already covered in her other paintings. So she's like, which one do you want to take down and throw away? And so like the kid will pick like, oh, this one. So then like they replace it and they walk over to the trash and throw away. So you can still tell your kids yes, but as a parent, you get to set the boundaries.
My short answer for you is your kids are watching. It doesn't matter what you tell them, honestly. I mean, it's important to tell them the right stuff, but if you don't back that up with the right actions, I notice it all the time with Ella. I mean, when she's doing something that's obnoxious or rude, she probably got it from me. And she's doing a 3-year-old version of it, so it's more obnoxious and more rude. But the truth is that she learned it from somewhere, and I think that's actually good news, because that means that we get to, if we're aligning our actions with that best person that we want to be, and it keeps me on my toes as well. Like, if I know she's watching, then I better be the best version of myself if I want... Here we go. If we want our kids to be the best version, then we need to be the best version of ourselves.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, man.
You know what? We on our podcast, we often do a added value segment where we talk about something that has added value to our lives recently, and I think maybe we'll switch it up a little bit and do a local added value segment, since we travel to Spokane quite a bit.
Yeah.
Do you have a local added value?
Yes. The coconut burger at, is it Huckleberry's?
Yes.
Oh my God. We went there earlier today. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to get that coconut burger. And Josh is like, the last 3 times I've been here, they've been out. And I was so sad. And I went there and like we asked, and they totally had them today. Yeah, out of this. If you haven't had it, it is out of this world. It is better. It's the best vegetarian burger I've ever had in my life. I'm not a vegetarian anymore, but it is the best vegetarian burger I have ever had in my life. I actually am tempted, because we live only like 3 hours away from here. They said, because they don't sell them in the store, but they said if I like purchased a case of coconut burgers in advance, they would
minimalism.
They would set them aside for me. Yeah. No, I don't think I'll do that. But damn, that's a good burger.
I was going to recommend Core Coffee, but they went out of business. I know.
We drove by earlier today, and it was.
I was so disappointed by that. It was one of my favorite coffee shops in the country, honestly, and they're gone. But I have another recommendation. The very first time I went floating was at Float Spokane, and so yeah, if you haven't done sensory deprivation yet, it's worth the trip.
Oh, dude, I totally thought you were talking about going in the river on a tube. I'm like, we live in Missoula, Montana, where a river literally runs through it, and the first time you floated... Anyway, sorry, I'm digressing.
I would never do that. This is disgusting. My water has to be sanitized.
Salinated.
Yeah. So
exactly 96 degrees.
That's exactly what. Yeah, it's the same temperature as your skin, and so it's sensory deprivation. You can't see anything, you can't feel anything, and you can't hear anything, and you realize how loud your mind is once you've turned all your other senses off, and it's a truly amazing experience. So I would encourage you to check that out. Real quick, we'll move on to right here, right now. We'll talk about what's going on in our lives. We're on tour. Did you know this? So we just had a few weeks off from our first little wave, and we're out on the second wave now. We're in Spokane. We're headed over to Seattle and Portland. Yes, we were just in Portland, Maine, and now we will be in Portland, Oregon. And we're headed like 40 cities total. So if anyone's listening to us at home and wants to come see us, you can. It's lessisnow.com is the address over there. Also, Ryan and I are building a new podcast and video studio. We want to do a lot more video work. We found that a lot of people got a ton of value in the documentary that we put out there. And so, yeah, someone liked the documentary. It was good. Thank you. And so we just started something called a Patreon page. Patreon allows people to support us per podcast if you can afford doing something like that, just $1 or $2 an episode. It's a great way. None of the money goes to me or Ryan. We're using it only to build the studio, also to pay Podcast Sean a living wage because he has a wife and 3 kids, and then also to hire a full-time filmmaker so we can do a lot more great, meaningful video content. So that's something we're working on. If you're interested in helping out with that, you can go to patreon.com/theminimalists, or you can just go to our website and click on the little donate button up there if you want to help out. One other way to help out, if you can't afford to help us out monetarily, if you want to leave a review on our podcast on iTunes. Let's see, is there anything else that is going on in our lives right now?
I don't know. You want to talk about the other cities that we're going to be in?
Oh, no, I don't have my whole list with me right now.
Okay.
But we're
going to be in a lot more cities. Well, every time we get on like a Facebook Live or like Sean wakes up to 100 emails, people are always like, when are you coming to Brazil? When are you coming to wherever? And it's Wichita, yeah. For anyone at home, you just go to lessisnow.com and you can see exactly where we'll be, when we will be.
Well, before we wrap up, I just want to thank a few folks real quick. First off, the venue, just all the folks here, Daryl, and then Jeff from Live Nation, the promoters of our tour. I just want to say thank you for letting us. This is such a beautiful space, don't you think?
Beautiful.
And most important, I want to thank you for being here. You know, you could have chosen to be anywhere else, and you decided to be here tonight, and we're grateful. I know that it costs some money to get into these events. Ryan and I don't really make any money from touring because of all the travel, and we bring other people with us, and everyone else we have to pay. But that we have to charge so that we can, afford to have a place like this. We can't try to drag all of you into a field somewhere and talk. But it actually costs you a lot more than money. It costs you your time and attention, and we're really grateful for that.
Thank you.
And if you leave, thank you. I seriously am grateful that you decided to come out here. It's really unbelievable that we get the chance to do this, and it's something we really believe in, and I'm just glad. And I think if you leave here with one message, we hope it's this: love people and use things, because the opposite never works. All right, y'all. We'll see you out there shortly.
We love you, Spokane. Thank you so much.
My name is Craig. I'm calling from the Toledo, Ohio area. And my comment is for Susan, who was wondering about keeping baby clothes to remind her of when her newborn came home. This, I'm sure, will certainly expand into other projects and papers and artwork as the child progresses from preschool through kindergarten up to 4th, 5th grade, when most of that artwork is produced. We kept a lot of that stuff. All of that sort of thing went into a big box because at the time when they're very young, that seems like very invaluable stuff to keep. And ultimately, as the children grew older, we started to sort through it and realized that only certain pieces meant something or that had something that we really liked. And those were items that got scanned or photographed. And even now, my children are 16 and 19, and as we still find various things, they kind of look at it and say, I don't know why you're keeping that. And so then we take a photograph of it, and then it goes in the trash. So they don't seem to mind at all, and we keep remembrances of the pieces we like the best in a digital format, and the rest of it goes away. So I guess what I'm saying is give yourself a little permission. Having a baby is a very exciting thing, and as they grow up, you will find more value in certain things than others, and the things that you seem to want to hold on the most right now may not seem as important in a few years. So give yourself a little time and a little availability to kind of hold on to stuff for a little while, but not forever.
Hey, Josh and Ryan. My name is Zach Miller, calling from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Just listened to your podcasts. I'm not sure if it was on clothing or travel or something like that, but you mentioned clothing, and just figured I'd share what I've learned about my clothing choices on my journey to becoming a minimalist. My 3 objectives for any sort of clothing item that I would own is that it is functional, it is durable, and it is stylistically versatile, meaning I can wear it to any or most of the activities that I would partake in. I generally stick to neutral or earth tones. This way it gets rid of the need for brands or logos, and I can, again, pretty much wear it anywhere. Pop of color every once in a while with an outerwear, maybe a rain jacket or a backpack or something like that. Helps to identify that it's yours as well, which is a useful function. And again, mostly what I wear is geared towards function. What will I use it for? Can I use it for many different things, whether it be professional, business, or going on a hike?
Hi, my name is Pepper Peroni. I'm from Dallas, Texas, and I'm 15 years old. I am a young student who is in high school, and I've just been listening to the Minimalist for about 3 years now. And I've gotten a lot of value from y'all's podcast and everything, but I wanted to give a comment to help out fellow young people and also fellow artists. Something that I've noticed from a very young age, I've always kind of been a maximalist and trying to fill up every wall with every painting and canvas I create. But sometimes that motivates me, and sometimes that almost deteriorates my function and my motivation. So something that I'd recommend is try going through your artwork and firstly scanning it all, because that portfolio that you have is something that can be valuable in the future. But I would also reach out to friends and family, and although giving material gifts at times can hurt someone, I think that if you reach out to them prior and say, hey, I have this piece of art, and I noticed that you have this empty wall and you've been talking about filling it up, I think that giving that creation to someone else, adding value to their life and adding value to yours by having an empty wall, can mean a lot to both people.
Hey everybody, it's Joshua Fields Milburn.
And I'm Ryan Nicodemus, and together we are the Minimalists.
Now, I was just looking up the dates for the second leg of the Less Is Now tour. So Ryan and I, we are in the middle of this crazy 40-city tour. We're doing a live talk about minimalism, an in-depth talk about minimalism. We're also recording a live version of the Minimalist podcast. We're answering a bunch of your questions in person. And, and we dish out a bunch of free hugs afterward.
Optional hugs.
Yes, yeah. We do hand hugs, too, if that's your thing. Whatever you like, we were looking forward to seeing you on the road. You can head on over to lessisnow.com. But here's the cities that we're coming to for the second leg of this 40-city tour. We're going to be in Canada again.
Oh, man, I can't wait. I love Canada.
We're going to be in Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton. But then we're headed to the East Coast of the United States. We're going to be in Philadelphia. We'll be in Manhattan and Brooklyn, 2 stops in New York City.
Wow. Dude, we've made it.
Well, we've never had a stop in Brooklyn, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then we'll be in Salt Lake City. Denver, and Phoenix, heading over to the mountains. And then we're touring internationally. We'll be in Texas. We're going to be in Austin and Dallas and Houston, and then Nashville, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, and Tampa. We're finishing off with the South almost, but then there's no better place to spend December than in Detroit and Milwaukee.
Wait, who told you that?
Our booking agent.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, so we're going to be in Detroit and Milwaukee. That's where we're going to finish the Less Is Now tour this year. Head on over to lessisnow.com. You can get your tickets, you can find the dates, the theaters, and you can see us soon.
Every little thing you think that you need, every little thing you think that you need, every little thing that's just feeding your greed. Oh, I bet that you'd be fine without it. Every little thing that you gotta have, every little thing that you gotta have, you gotta reach for, and you gotta grab. Oh, I bet that you'd be fine without it. So tear your eyes away, or tear